so you can, sorry, there's just a distraction on my screen. Continue. Yeah, so you can work at your own pace if you want to. You can just sort of sit and watch and listen, and then rewatch any bits that you've missed. So don't feel you've got to go at my speed. Just sort of dip in and out and do what you want to tonight. Anything else? Please interrupt me, because I don't stop talking for 2 hours. So if you've got a question that you need to ask and that you'd like to ask, none of them are silly, they're all really valid, about materials or process or something that I've explained that you don't understand, then please just ask it as we're going along. You'll need to unmute your microphone, and you can do that by holding onto your space bar whilst you're talking, and it will temporarily unmute you. You can also put your questions into the chat box, and I won't read those because I'll be busy, but Gav will shout them around the corner. And also other people quite often answer the questions, and I know from reading all of your chats in previous classes, it was really interesting and quite funny to to read what you're chatting about, and I always love the chats about materials and stuff like that, and always learn something about something that you've enjoyed using, and there's always lots of good advice there. And we've got such a broad span of experience on these calls as well, from those of you that are just starting out on your art journey to those of you who've been working professionally for decades and decades. So it's always so great to have all of your knowledge on these calls. So without further ado, we'll pop down to my other camera and have a little look at some mini maps. Bear with me a minute, bit of a slow techie. Here we go. Just get my cup of tea out the shop. Okay, so I've sent you some handouts, and so here are a couple that I just want to talk through, because I want to start sort of a thinking process in your head about what you might like to do this evening. You might have already thought about a map that you'd like to create, but if you haven't, don't worry, because I hope that we'll find something by talking through this. Okay, so some of you that follow me on Instagram will have seen that I posted bits about literary maps, and that's the thing that's really inspired my map making. So I've put a few on here for you, which is also my favourite is the Milli Molly Mandy one. And I love this Wind in the Willows map. And I think this is the thing, this kind of beautiful map where you feel like you're stepping in and there's loads and loads of detail, are the things that are really evocative in our minds of picture book maps that we quite often see when we're growing up. But it's also the thing that's quite intimidating about an illustrated map, because the detail is so beautiful and the perspective is so perfect on something like this that it can be a bit overwhelming to feel like you need to create something like this. Bit more simple is the Winnie the Pooh map. Again, still really evocative. The lovely thing is when you read the stories that you feel like you can then place, you know, all of the things that you're reading about in your mind by having a map like this. A nice flattened perspective on the Milli Molly Mandy map here is the thing that I really like about it, and the tiny descriptions. I love it that there is no perspective on this. So this is a great takeaway if you are a new artist, or if you're just an experienced artist who really just wants to have a good time and do a really a much simpler map that you can generate more quickly. You don't have to go into sort of painstaking detail like this. And I think really that's what my whole thing is that I come up usually against a brick wall with some sort of art thing that I need to do, and I try and always look for the easy route out, and that's how I've sort of come up with this system that I'm going to show you tonight. There's lots of things on these maps that we can steal as well. So remember, we're stealing like an artist, which is that we are influenced and inspired by some of these things. We're not just flat out copying the maps. So there might be things on these maps like the fact that the lettering around these cottages has got a little border around it. That could be a really great idea to steal. Perhaps not adding colour around text, that could be an interesting idea. Some of the tiny symbols, the little sort of repeat of grass on the fields and the tiny dots on the Milli Molly Mandy map, where there is obviously, I think, allotments or a crop or something growing. So we can steal all of those. This one from Cressida Cowell's, oh, what's it called? The Dragon's book, How to Train Your Dragon. You can't see it so well, but I do like the shade. She does little lines of shading all around the edge of the island, just to sort of show that that's the edge. Again, simplifying things. So we're using lots of artistic license to represent something else. So not really literal. It might be things like the compass rose. You know, you could steal a bit of the compass rose and add it to your own. I'm just going to move on to this handout here. And these are creative interpretations of map making by different illustrators and how they've gone about doing, you know, tracing a journey or tracing a place, giving a sense of where they are. And I've just pinched all of these off of Pinterest, and I can't credit all of them, I'm afraid. There's a few, this one's definitely Oliver Jeffers. But if you go onto Pinterest, and you could create a pin board, if you just type in a search of illustrated map, you'll find lots of really interesting maps like this. And again, there's loads of ideas to steal on these maps. I particularly like how this one has got a little gate in, and that's on the edge of the sort of border of the map, so that becomes part of the border. I love that idea. And this is a really simple map, and again, using simple symbols to fill in the spaces so that there's no blank space, but they're repeated. So there's probably maybe 4 tree shapes here, but they're just repeated again and again and again. And I love the fact that this is a dirt track, so this is a bit of a road, and look, they've got bins here. But they've just, instead of kind of creating a wonky road, they've just added a tiny bit of repeat texture and just created a line. It doesn't have to look like a road. And this is the key with map making, that it doesn't have to be exactly how it is represented. It's your interpretation. Here, I like that this is obviously a promo for a coffee shop, and they've just given a little mapped area so that you could stop off at their coffee shop, but you could also go and look around some of these other roads around Santa Monica. And this is a lovely one, isn't it? This is when I did a day map making workshop, this was one of the favourites that people really loved. And they used this idea of creating a map that wasn't of any particular place, but was just a representation of a journey. So in the front of a travel journal, this would just be a really lovely, like a frontispiece, really. Sorry, that's the cat. She's Siamese. She's not very good on Zoom calls. So yeah, I just love it that this just sort of tracked a path. And I mean, you could illustrate the underneath part of this and then stitch a little kind of journey from point A to point B. But it's just a random found bits of ephemera. This is another really useful idea to steal from Oliver Jeffers, in that he's drawn he's done a drawing underneath. So, you know, I'm imagining maybe you could do a garden map. You could draw a little map of your garden, and then choose a route that you're going to take through the garden, and you just draw that on top of the map with a big red pencil, big red crayon. It could also be really good if you've gone out for the day, or you're on holiday and you've gone on a really long walk. So, you know, perhaps you have been to a city, or you've been around we've got lots of sort of Cotswold trails and tracks and things. So to do a very random line and then sort of illustrate sections of the pathway and things that you've seen also works as a map. So it's just thinking differently. It's not just illustrated maps are they use a lot of artistic license, basically. So here, this person is just choosing the types of things she wants to exhibit. So in her map, so she's not, I say she, I think it's a she, she's not illustrating everything exactly where it is. She's just used one road and one river, and then just used the space to illustrate things of that area of where. So that could be another interesting idea.
Lucia?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Julia here. I've on the printouts. Can you tell me those ones that you're talking about now? They weren't on my printouts? Is that one that I should have? And
Yeah, has everybody else got that one?
I've only got
Yes, I have it. That's Teresa here.
Oh. Yeah. So I don't know why you
haven't.
Yeah, so everyone's got that one, but I don't know why you haven't got it. But I will, when I send the video out, you'll get all the printouts sent again. So and then if you don't get it that time, message me and I can send it to you as an individual file.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and finally, this little one, which has got loads of lovely ideas to steal, hasn't it? You know, what a lovely idea to have a decorative border around your map. You know, that's so lovely, especially again, if you're illustrating a walk, a rural area or a garden, just to have some edging around it that relates to the interior map is quite interesting, I think. And some really very simple tree shapes, always good. And very flat buildings and little fox. So I don't know why, I don't know what the fox is relevant to, but maybe they had a fox theme on their wedding because this is a map to their wedding. So maybe, or maybe the area is known for its foxes. I don't know. But yeah, so, and there's such a tiny amount of information in there, but it's so beautiful and delicate. So today, or any little map that you do, it's worth remembering that it could be quite complex like this. It could be like Millie Molly Mandy's village map, but it could be incredibly simple, like this little one. And I would say if you're a beginner and you're daunted, then work with something like this. So what do you do for a map? Well, I've got lots of ideas. You could do your local area, you could do a walk, you could do a place from your memory. And I would suggest today that it obviously does need to be from your memory. And there's lots of, I mean, it might be just a little road that you're living on now. It might be a road that you remember or a small close. It could be a collection of a couple of houses. It could be a small section of your garden that you map. But it's worth having a little think about it. And I'll just talk you through a couple of my maps. But have a think about what you might do. And I'm going to show you some rough plans of how to plan it out. So this, so I haven't got the original of this one. It's up at the studio and it's on a little exhibition at the moment. But I think you've got, so this was, I've been mapping basically the places where I've lived. And this was our first little house there. And then that was our second little house. So this village has got a lot more houses in it. But I chose to just illustrate a few of them because I only had, basically because I only had a small piece of paper. It's so ridiculous, isn't it? But it was a really nice piece of paper. And so I was just thinking, well, how many houses could I get onto this? All of the lettering has been cut out of a book called The Magic Garden. So that inspired the piece really. And the magic garden that the garden that we had at this little house was really magical, and children loved to come and play there. And it was like something out of the famous Five. So that was hence the magic garden. There was lots of little pathways that led to it from the fields. There was also other little bits that I'd found in books, like the land of far beyond. So we always felt like we were coming into a bubble, which was this village, when we came over the bridge, because there were two big towns either side, and they were the land of far beyond. But it's kind of, those of you that have done this found poetry and found lettering with me before will know that these words come and find you. So if you have a pile of books and old papers and magazines and stuff, when you start looking, words with an intention of looking, you know, for something to put on a map, these little words just come and find you, and they make you laugh because some of them are quite irreverent, or they've just got like a double meaning when you look at them with a different head on. So I'll talk you through that stage a bit later, but there's a little close up there. So yeah, you get these little sort of making little signs and stuff. We're going to be working on that today. So finally, this was the piece I've been working on to try and figure out how to teach you how to make maps, because I needed to work out my process, because quite often I do these workshops. There we go. I do these workshops and then I put them up there and then I don't know how I'm going to teach them, so I have to remake everything. So this was another map documenting a place where I lived, which is number 5 Willoughview Close, Malmesbury, and the house that I grew up in. And I wanted to see if I could make this close, because it, you know, like all 1970s, 1980s housing estates, they do seem to have been designed with families in mind, and I could remember almost everybody that lived in these houses. My mum also is not kind of correct, so there are other houses down here, and some of them should be semi-detached, so you can see I've written on there actually a semi. That was my granny's house that was joined to Val's house, and we could see it across the road from ours. And my mum got very, she loved all of this. And she said, well, you can't just chop a house in half. I was like, well, it doesn't work visually, Mum. It's artistic license. But she was horrified that I'd cut these houses up. And then the people that lived here, I think that was Primrose and Ianthe Shrubshaw. And there was somebody else that lived with them, and we couldn't remember who it was, so I didn't bother putting it on. And again, my mum said, well, you cannot put it on, they'll be offended. I actually think when I was little, Primrose and Ianthe were about 90 then. So I don't think they're about, and I don't think they're going to be offended. They're definitely not on Instagram. But it might be that actually I was quite young, and everybody seems old, don't they, when you're young? So they might have only been 40, I don't know. But anyway, basically what I'm saying with all of this is to use loads of artistic license, and I'm going to show you how to sort of contort your location through my mapping system. Like I said, it isn't exactly like this. Willoughview Close isn't exactly like this, but it's kind of like it, you know. The houses do look like that. They were all sort of 1970s semis, and some of them were detached. Anyway, and so I've got this one. I haven't got any text on, except my little handwritten bits, because I felt that all of this text here was going to be too much dotted around the house. So that's why I created a key. But it might be that you've got space. I didn't know that I was going to have space until I did my planning. So I'm going to show you that now, and then you can kind of, once you've got the basic big bits in, you can then plan all the little bits. And the little bits like words and cut out random bits of information like this that I've found in old maps. It's Ministry of Transport classified down that road, and it was a bit dodgy in that area, so probably was. Even there's so many things that you can fill the gaps with. So we're going to work from big to small, like we quite often do in our illustration classes. But don't worry about the words too much now, because they will come and find you. Okay, so let me show you my plans for this little map. So it started off like this. It's quite rubbish, really. But so this was me just working out what the map might look like. What shape would it take? What text was it important for me to put on there? There was some things that were really important, which was the things that were important to me in 1987, which was that my granny and grampy lived there. That was my house. That was where Andrew Simpson lived, and that was where I needed to go to get to my friend Sarah's. The other thing that was important was the bike route that we took. Those were the most important things in my life, so they had to go on. So by doing this small basic plan, I could kind of wiggle it around and work out, you know, if this was going to be a map, how would this sit onto a piece of paper? So then after I'd done that, I then came this, whoops, a bit more detailed. So again, you can see this is starting to look a little bit like my map. I've got the big numbers on there. I've got some more names, look, Dick and Dodo, Mr. and Mrs. Pennicott. My mum told me those. And I've got a few more bits of information that I felt was good to put on, bike riding. And then I found, so there was lots of houses in this area here, but because I couldn't remember who lived there, I just sort of stuck on a bit of paper because I thought that would be a really good cartouche. That's what this little thing is, a cartouche. And I quite often work with little bits of paper like this, and then I'll take it off and stick it on somewhere else. So that this is sort of, a little basic plan now in how I worked it out. I could have had it that way with the houses facing up. But I thought actually I'll put the houses facing this way. Then I drew out the rough for this. So we're going to work through this stage now together. And maybe you just want to do your own map of a small area. Maybe you just want to sort of copy mine, but what I will say is that it is about the thinking process. So if it's a memory map, it can be really useful to, like that little Google man on Google Maps that you pick up and then you drop him down into, he looks a bit like this, doesn't he? And he's got like floppy arms, and you drop him down into the map location. And I want you to kind of do that with yourself in your memory. So it's to sort of pick yourself up and put yourself down in a place in your memory. So it might be in your past memory. It might be the place where you lived when you were little. It might be, in a location that's really close to you now, at the top of the road you live on, or at the end of your garden or something like that. Pick yourself up, put yourself in that memory, and then in that memory, start looking around. So look to your right, maybe make some notes of what you see. Look around to your left, what do you see? And then you can start walking through that memory, looking around, making notes. You can maybe make some little sketches and drawings, just really, really rough. And it's used, if it's a past memory, everything becomes a bit faded and you start to remember the things that were really important. But when you start looking, you might remember some things that you hadn't thought of for years. So I've done my little past memory. So I'm going to be working on the road that I live in. And I'm just going to very quickly and basically map it out. Do it with a pencil. I'm going to do mine with red so that you can see it. Okay, so most importantly, my house is here. And then the road. So I really need to do this to figure out the shape of my map. So there's another house opposite there. That goes to Kilcott. That's my house. So I don't want to interrupt your memories, but it really doesn't matter. So that's the Baptist chapel. It doesn't really matter if you leave houses out. So even if you just put houses in now and then they don't work visually, you can just chop them out. As long as you're not really close to your neighbours.
You could leave our annoying neighbour.
Yeah. Gavin said we could leave one of our annoying neighbours out. Not you, the Fries. We won't leave you out. Well, actually, I might do because I'm not mapping your area of the village. So that goes around like that, and then the school is there. So that could be interesting for me to put in. Now this is where I always come unstuck with it. So I've got to extend Another bit of paper. So this is looking actually now, it's going to tell me what sort of shape paper I'm going to need, because it's going to be quite long. So our road is quite long. School. I'm going to show you my garden map in a minute as well. And then we've got a little road down there. We've got some houses here. Oh, and I've just missed out all the houses along there. That might be all right. So we've got a few little houses here, cottages. But what I really wanted to get to was the pub. So school, a few more houses, pub. There's quite a lot more houses. But I think this is giving an impression, you know, quite a good impression. Oh, there's a garden here. There's Fred's lovely garden. And then there's little cottages along here. Lovely house there where Tom lives. Oh no, see, it's not really worked out well, has it? Because the junction is about there. So let's put those houses there. Garden. Tom's house by the junction. The pub is a bit way back. Let's move that. So it's nice to be able to sort of figure out. It's much easier to do this not on a Zoom call live as well. That goes up to the, this could be good. So that goes up to the allotments. So I'm starting to think about now the things that I like drawing and the things that I want to include. So I don't want to include every single house. There's quite a few little houses along here, but what I do like is the allotments. And that could be visually really nice. There's other houses here, but I'm going to leave them off and I'm just going to put the allotments there because I think they could be visually pleasing. Perhaps I could have some gardens of these houses joining up with the allotments. I don't know if they do, but and I think I could leave that now and just suggest where that goes. So that, oh dear. So that goes to Witton. So the junction is about there actually, pub, allotments. Witton, Hawkesbury. So I hope yours is all kind of coming along. Because I'm doing my key areas, I'm going to end up with, so I've scribbled those old pubs out that went wrong. There's no houses along that, but it's mostly people's gardens from here. So again, that could be good too. You start to see little gaps in your design because it might be that you've not quite drawn it right, which doesn't matter. And it might be that the road doesn't go exactly where you want it to. But if there's little gaps, then you can add some of the things from the sheet that I've given you, the sort of simplified map images. Trees are always good to add in. So these gardens go down. And there's my garden. Actually, it's starting to feel like, so the graveyard could be in the back of the Baptist chapel. It's starting to feel a bit like a map of the gardens in my road. And that's just I hadn't thought about that, but that could be an interesting theme of a map. And generally, that's how I get my ideas. Actually, I'm not going to start drawing that little road. We'll just say New Mills Lane. It's by sort of thinking in a very messy way like this that I really start to come up with ideas, because it's all right to go wrong really at this stage, isn't it? Well, at any stage. In my case, Kilcott Road. We've left quite a few, there's a few houses here. My mum would be worried about that I'd left those houses out. And the neighbours might get cross. I love, so here where Fred lives, he grows beautiful irises and dahlias, and he shows them at garden shows all across the southwest. So these gardens are full of flowers. So to me, it's feeling like a garden, a map of the gardens along my road. Ooh, that would be good. So I'm also kind of looking here at where might be a space now for a little cartouche, maybe a compass. So this is busy here, this is a bit quieter. So I could always chop these gardens off, and that could be a bit of a cartouche there. By cartouche, I mean the little bit that sort of states what the map's about. Garden geography of Kilcott Road or something like that. But there's also room down here, I think, to chop these gardens off. So that potentially could be a good space. And there's houses here in real life, but I don't really want to draw them. And I mean, I could extend this way and have more gardens, but let's say that we'll chop it off here. So I could have here a little compass rose. I don't know if that is north. I think it is, sort of. I'd have to check, but you get the gist. So what did we say then? So glorious gardens of the glorious Kilcott Road, Hillsley. I like to put something random in there as well, like the postcode, GL12 7RJ. And you could have silly things like the date, as of June 2021, or stuff like that. Again, it will all come true when you start looking for found words. So that would be stage one for me, planning. But I always, once I've got a map plan like that, is kind of turn it around just to check. It could be that my map is like this, and so all of my houses will sit this way up. And you read the map upwards. This is important to gauge at this stage. Am I going to read it like this so that I open my, because it's quite big, I didn't intend for it to be this big, or do I want it to be like that? We've got the plan, we just need to know which way the houses are going to sit. And I think actually it works like this. But like I said to you, when I did my one of Willoughview Close and I started drawing it out, I didn't think that the T shape worked, so I shifted it round. So I would then go on to do another stage of this that is a bit better, a bit more, I can refer to this now and have it in the background. I could make it a bit smaller, so I know what shape it needs to be. So it is quite a long map, so I can compact it if I want to, or make it bigger. But generally, I know that it probably would fit on a piece of A4 if I made it a bit smaller. It depends what you want your map for. So if you did a very small map of just a couple of houses and their gardens, and you wanted it to fit into a sketchbook, you could do it on another piece of paper and stick it in, and I'll show you a little map fold that you can do with that later. But yes, size at this stage is kind of good to plan. What do you want your map for? Where do you want it to go? Is it going to fit inside a sketchbook? And then I'd go in with another piece of paper and sort of sketch out a bit better how I want it all to be. I meant to say to you at the beginning that making these maps takes me ages, so it's not going to get it all into a 2-hour class from start to finish, a finished map, but they don't take me ages in a kind of you know, one of those ways where you're painstakingly creating a painting. It's more a pleasurable way of sort of pottering about and thinking it through, and where do you put this and where do you put that. The lettering part takes me ages because I spend hours and hours looking through books and magazines, and then I get distracted and start reading articles. Okay, so I've got my sort of basic shape now that I can see on my map is like that of the road. I'm still going to get it wrong. So I can go in a bit neater now. I'm pressing down quite hard so you can see. But normally I'd just be doing this very lightly with a pencil. You could at this stage be drawing with a pencil onto your finished bit of paper. I'm still sort of figuring out how I want it to look. I quite like how that road goes up there and this road goes up here. If you hear snoring in the background, it's not Gavin, it's the dog. At least I don't think it's you, Gav. You still awake, Gav?
Yeah,
He's still awake, everybody. Okay. So while I'm mapping this out and you're mapping yours out, I can tell you about something that happened to me when I was in Nailsworth a couple of weeks ago. I will tell you the story, but first of all, I will just tell you that I saw a celebrity that walked into a shop that I was in. So, and they are a national treasure. There's the clue. Answers or guesses in the chat box, please, as I tell you the story. So I just had my hair done for the first time since last June, and I was waiting for Gav to come and pick me up because we were going to have a look at a garden that was open. And so I went just down the road into a shop that I know that sells actually pants. So I was going to go and buy myself a sloggy thong. And I'm just gonna got distracted after the sloggy thong with my house. I'm actually going to turn my house round, I think, because I want everything to face this way. So I'm just turning all the houses face to the middle of the road, but I'm turning them to face me, the viewer. So that's an important point. I'm just using my artistic license. So these ones are actually facing the right way. Anyway, I went into the shop to get a sloggy thong, and I was looking at said sloggy thongs, and unfortunately it didn't have my size. And who should walk in but a lady, who then said to the lady at the counter in a broad West Country accent, "Can I introduce you to this lovely special lady?" Said to the lady at the counter, "My friend." And I just thought it was, you know, obviously they were just having a chat and her friend had come. And then when I looked up from the knickers, walked in Dame Judi Dench. That's all. And I was in a rush because I just needed to get my pants, but they didn't have my size. And Gavin was going to meet me, but I had to stay there because nobody made a fuss. All the other women were looking at their clothes because it was a clothes shop. And I thought, bloody hell, Dame Judy Dench. And it turned out she was staying with a friend of hers in the area whose husband was a film director. I don't know if Lou is on this call and knows any film directors in the Nailsworth Stroud area. Possibly not. But yeah, so they were staying there and Judy was just coming and looking around Nailsworth. But she seemed to know the ladies that own the shop very well, and they were just talking about family. And then at the end, as I was leaving, I heard the other lady who sort of introduced Dame Judy to the shop assistant say to her, "I hope, Dame Judy, you didn't mind when I held your hand and talked to you about Maltesers." And I didn't know. I should have stayed longer because, well, if you know me, if you've been on these calls before, you know that I really like listening to people's conversations in places like that and jotting them down in my sketchbook. But I had to go because of there wasn't anywhere to park. Gavin was coming and I needed to grab a lift. So that was exciting. Anyway, did anybody get that in the chat box? Did you find National Treasure? I've said that to a couple of my friends before and they guessed Mary Berry, another female National Treasure. Okay, now because I've got distracted talking about Judi Dench, I've got waylaid. So yeah, at this stage, I'm adding in just a bit more detail into my plan, figuring out where these houses are going to sit, how the garden's going to fill up the space. I think this is going to be a great place for my text. What other text am I going to add on to this? Oh no, that's the Baptist Chapel. Graves, Celia's house, the manse. Am I going to add in, this is the place to decide whether you add in some descriptions, house names and numbers. Are you going to create a key like I did on my Willoughview Close where you just label? And remember that the numbers don't have to actually be the numbers of those houses. Lots of these houses have got house names, but they just can be a simple key to who lives there or perhaps the house name. If you were doing a garden map, you could key in areas of your garden, the sunken garden, the Mediterranean terrace, things like that. My mum has got, Monty Don has got the long border at his house. My mum's got the very, very short border at hers that she calls, would you like to come see the very short border? Okay. And it is very short. It's about the size of a large pot. So maybe you've got areas of your garden like that you could document, because I think this would be a really nice way of doing it. But yes, certainly the key works well, but I do love having text sort of, working its way round. So I want to have loads of flowers here because Fred grows so many flowers. And they're much nicer. There's some more houses here. I don't want to draw those. I want to have lots of flowers. And there's loads of flowers here as well. We're getting in just that bit more detail now, working out how we're going to fill the space. I'm thinking the allotments could be a lot of fun because there's some nice shapes of plots. You don't need to do this at this stage, filling in loads of detail. But this simplified map image sheet that I've given you is a great place when we go into our finished ones for adding texture to areas which are a bit sparse. So at this planning stage, when you've got all the essential bits of information that you want to get in, big style, so the bigger buildings and the bigger structure, if there are some gaps, that's when you need to start thinking about what could I pop in? Could I pop in some trees or sort of texture for rough ground? Is there water there? So I haven't got my big things in because I was talking too much about my celebrity spot. And I got a bit distracted. But yes, you're working from big to small. So I want the school facing this way. Now the pub faces that way, but actually I want it facing, again, me, the viewer. There's the cat again. And I'm working on this from memory, but I think if I was sort of drawing this properly on my finished one, I might just go and have a walk up to the pub and take a photo just to get a general look of it, you know, just where the windows are and where the sign is for the pub. It might be the same for some of these houses to get in some of the little features, but it doesn't really matter. You can make it up. The 1970s housing estates are really quite simple because most of the houses are exactly the same, but that in itself is, to me, interesting. So all these gardens I'm thinking could be really different. One could be lots of vegetable beds, one could have lots of flowers in, one could have beehives in. And that's just little thoughts that have popped into my head now, thinking that I need to use this space up because I've got the allotments coming down here. So I'm just making it up. In fact, this probably goes into field here. I've actually left my house. No, that was my house, wasn't it? There's my garden. My garden could border that. That's quite nice. So the edge of my garden could become like a bit of a border. So I hope you're getting on okay with your little plans and that this is helping, this idea of rough to slightly better. Now, this row of houses isn't like that. Now, how can I do that? So this is a terrace of houses that face this way. So I could do what I did with the semi-detached houses and split them up so that they become three little houses. They could actually, oh, I tell you what, they could be stacked up, couldn't they? A different way. Instead of on their sides, they could be stacked up top to bottom. Like they're on top of each other. That's a bit controversial, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So looking for the solutions that your brain says are wrong, but the illustration police say is allowed, is legal. That's such a beautiful old house, this one here, really ancient. Not really done it justice there. Coco. Come on now. Come on now. Okay, so I think I've got a bit more detail in there. I might add a little house and a garden there just to break up the school and the pub. Oh dear, the cat's getting in. Here. That's not very helpful. That's not very helpful. Okay, so that's where I am at this stage now. So it's slightly better. I know where I'm going to go with that.
Question on the chat: how do you draw an L-shaped house?
Ooh, I probably wouldn't do it as an L shape. I'd probably take one. So how do you draw an L shape from the front? So there it is from
It's important because this person's house is L-shaped.
Okay. So I guess you'd have to decide, I mean, if it's important that we get the L shape in, it means that probably their front door is here or here, because obviously if you can be looking at it in the simple ways. I would say your best bet for an L-shaped house is to, if you were looking at it face on, you wouldn't get the L, but you'd probably get, sorry, I'm going to have to put the cat is climbing all up my arm in a very friendly way. Sit down, it's on my lap.
Remove the cat.
Can you take the cat? So if we were looking at your house, let me get another piece of paper and L-shaped house. So there's the L-shaped house from above, and we're going to be looking at it from this direction. So for an L-shaped house this way, you would probably have just another section of house there. So it might be a bit like this. Depends what the roof is like, really, and where the windows are and all that sort of thing. Sometimes you can have the back part of the house can come up a bit higher than this L shape. So let's say the door's there. To see where the roof line is, maybe it could sit like that. Don't know where those windows are, but that would work quite well, having the jutting out part of the house sort of sitting proud, and then that other section behind just sitting up. Would that work? It's just as a simplified version. Don't know what the house looks like, but most the L-shaped houses, they do have this sort of apex roof. So I hope that helps. We were looking at simplified shapes in the drawing houses class. It's to imagine what those shapes might be and create a really simple version. So just very briefly for the little house, it's to have almost halfway down, sort of a little cottage. You have a rectangle, draw a line nearly halfway down, and then that just becomes your roof line. And then your windows are just dark shapes like that are added in as a very simple house. And you can bring in some lines for the roof texture.
Another good question is, have you put big hills on that?
Big hills. So I would put them, so if you're looking down, you can obviously, the sort of ordnance survey method for creating a hill is to have the lines closer together, isn't it? Which is really dull if you're doing an illustrated map. So I would just, if there was a hilly area, I would just draw hills like that. Just very simple illustrative hills. You could even have them, if they've got small trees on them, it makes them look bigger. And they can be completely out of proportion to all of the rest of the map. So say this was the little house in the village that you were illustrating. There's the road. This area here is the hilly area where people like to go walking. But yeah, you could just have sort of hillocky symbols like that. You could have some little sheep on there with legs. Well, that look like a tortoise. But certainly popping a few sort of trees on there, or even pathways on the hills. Adding the standard grass symbol can be really useful too. So lots of those symbols, it's a really good question for the hills. There's lots of those sort of grassy symbols on and texture symbols on this sheet. And again, there's quite a few little houses and church and stuff like that. Also, it might be that, say you had a little coffee shop or a pub and you didn't want to draw the coffee shop or a pub, you could just draw a symbol, a bottle of wine, a mug of beer, a cup of tea, and that becomes that location rather than drawing a property. So, I was saying in this little map of my road, I was extending gardens just because they visually looked right. If there were too many houses and it was all getting a bit cluttered, to replace some of them with symbols, other symbols, and shops or whatever, you know, that can be really useful. So these symbols here, it can be really great for representing bodies of water without drawing lots of water. So just some little wiggly lines, you know, a canal, a river, a box with some little wiggly lines in it. It's all the things we put lots of barriers, I think, up for ourselves when we're trying to do this thing, because we think that they should look realistic, something like this. And it's exactly when my mum was getting concerned about the adjustments that I was making to Will of You Close, it reminded me of the fact of how we have a concept of what is right to put on something and how it should look correct. And the idea of this illustrative map making is that it absolutely doesn't need to be, and you're making it suit your needs and your purposes and your drawing ability and your desire to, you know, do the things that you want to do. I don't like drawing cars, so I never put any cars on my illustrations unless I absolutely have to. But I do love drawing little bushes and trees and little houses. So I'm making it work for me, my illustrations. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next stage. Is there anything anybody would like me to go over on this sort of planning stage? Or do you feel like you can give yourself permission now to adjust the places of where everything is? Is that all right? Any questions at this stage? Okay.
Very good, thanks.
Sorry, was that somebody?
No, it's okay.
No,
Alright.
sure.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay. Okay, so I think while I've got the drawing stuff out, I might just show you quickly how to do a compass star, compass rose. She'll do it on a clean piece of paper, because they're really easy and I think they look really nice. I have done a little version of this on your little cheat sheet, but I'll take you through it, and it's quite good to have it on the video. I would recommend that you do this with a pencil. I'm going to do it with a pen so you can see. So you draw across 2 lines, and then you cross over that like you're drawing a star, equal length lines. Say equal length, that's a bit longer. And then you bring your longer points down to your shorter points all the way around. I like to turn my paper around to do it so that I get the right angle for my hand. If they're looking a bit wonky, well, if you'd be doing it with a pencil and you'd make it look a bit neater, but get the choice. You can make a few adjustments. And then you, with those little shorter lines you just extend them out a bit more, about sort of equal distance, so that they're all similar. And then I just put a little top on them, a little triangle. If you make these smaller lines inside more narrow, you get sharper points. So I'll show that to you in a minute. And then you would, so I'll just do this with a pencil. You shade in one of your larger triangles. So I'm going to the right. I'm making the decision to go to the right. So with that little triangle, that little set of triangles, I'm going to do the right-hand side, that little one, the right-hand side of the big one. Right-hand side of the little one. And again, it helps when you turn it around to then always think to stay consistent with which side you're colouring in. And then you get your little compass rows, and you can add little arrows onto it if you want to. You could then put your letters. So that's quite a nice little addition. And like I said, if you do the same thing, but make your cross in the middle smaller, you get much steeper points. You don't have to do a compass rose. You could just literally draw an arrow, but you could have nice lettering on it. You could have cut out lettering or stamped lettering. It's quite nice. You'd have to get compass out and work out where north actually is. I'm sure there's an app you can get to do that. But yeah, I like adding these directional arrows. So these on here could be used as compass roses. They could also be used as directional arrows to take you on a journey through your map. Right, so my last stage would be to draw this out with pencil. And go over it with pen. Now, those of you that come normally to my classes know that I generally just go straight in with pen with everything, almost everything that I do. But I do like, and I think I probably will on this map, because I like the wonkiness of it. It's because I'm not fearful of going wrong. I would really recommend that if you're quite new to drawing and sort of planning out these stages, and if you are not sure about what you're going to draw in the sections yet, that you draw it all out in pencil first. I don't do lots of rubbing out. Actually, I'm going to make this line a bit thicker. Sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. I'm only going to draw a tiny section of it out in pencil. I'm going to do it in pen so that you can see me draw. And this would be the minimum is just to get that road layout there so that I can then go in with a pen. And again, I know I'm going to fit it all in because I've got the road. But like I said, if you are, that's probably not enough for lots of people. So I would recommend you then just keep going, adding in your details with pencil. Don't go too detailed with the pencil, as in adding all the little sort of patterns and trees and things like that. Just map out your large shapes. So there's my Baptist chapel. So it might be that you just want to get those in, and you don't add things like chimney stacks and roof patterns and gravestones and grass patterns. You're just logging in where you want those buildings. So it might be for you that drawing a square for the house is enough for you then to go in with pen. But like I said, if it's not, then go in with lots of detail so you know where everything is, but don't add the tinier details. Right, so it's 8:15 now. I'm going to just draw some of the details in here in pen so that I can then show you how to paint, how I'd sort of by painting options. So what should we go for? We'll go for the Baptist Chapel. So I am using a pen that's got waterproof ink in it. And I'm going to be washing it over with watercolour, so I don't want the watercolour to run the ink. And there's lots of pen options. So I've got a Fudenosuke brush pen by Tombow. Lots of you know the other options. I've got my platinum carbon pens. It's like a fountain pen with waterproof ink. Some good cheap options are the UD Pin pens. Got different size nibs. The higher the number, the bit thicker the nib. They're completely waterproof and they're a couple of quid each. And I've got my Sailor pen, which is again is a fountain pen with a bent nib, and I put waterproof ink in it, which is Diatramentis waterproof ink. If you are new, then just go for some of these fine liners, they're great. The other thing that you could do if you don't want to do it in pen is you can draw out in a coloured pencil, so you might just choose one colour to do the whole map. So I'm going to do lots of options for these houses, and I can show you how each of the different pens and different colours are going to look. So I've got Celia's little house here. So this workshop kind of complements the painted houses and the drawing houses workshops that we've done over the last couple of weeks, but you don't need to have done them. But those of you that have will sort of recognise the techniques I'm drawing for the houses, but they are very simplified forms. This is a really beautiful, so I can actually look at this house now out of this window, so I'm glancing at it. So this one might get a bit too detailed. Window, window, window. So I would suggest that you, whatever medium you choose to draw your map with, that you stick with one medium. I'm going to go in with a few so that I can show you some different painting techniques. So I'm just changing now to a brown fine liner. I did a little workshop about diagramming and we used brown fine liners because, again, they're waterproof. This is my house now. What does my house look like? It's got a bit that goes like that. So the brown fine liners give quite a nice sepia look. So if you're going a bit retro.
It's a bit wonkier than that, Lucia.
It's a bit wonky than that. I'm good at drawing wonky houses as well. It's got a little round window here. Weird. Who puts a round window in a house unless you're in play school? There's a window there. Oh, that's my bedroom window. Stick that in. I've gone a bit overexcited on my own house. I haven't got any room for anyone else's. Haven't got a porch at the moment because we've had it taken off with the render, but I'm adding it back on in like a second. Go up a bit close. Okay. Add some little grassy marks. We've got lots of trees in our garden, so I'm going to do a representational tree. I like to draw trees like this, that are kind of a circle with a little, very sort of short trunk. And then do a few, again, representational branches. I'm just going to pop in. So we've got 2 bungalows. We've got the old dairy. Might make those bungalows really little. Dave and Jenny's, my neighbours, they've got big windows. So it looks like then I've got a mansion compared to those little bungalows. They are quite big bungalows. Actually, I've just given that bungalow an upstairs. That's no good. They've got a great big window there. We've got a drive that comes. So this is a good thing when you've got this pencil line that you can then, this is the bit that I find quite difficult. So there's got some nice gates and fence. There. But you can then sort of bring in little driveways. And I'm not joining it all up, I'm just representing the drive. See this drive, and they've got a lovely gate and a hedge. I'm moving quite fast with my pen, but I normally would, I think, just take, I love taking a bit of time doing all of these little details. Some big trees in there. And again, I would be adding all the houses in before I start to add the trees, because they're great fillers, so they can fill in a lot of gaps. But just to get some of these little sort of areas done and dusted. Stick in a few more and put in a few gardens as well. So that was going to be my key. So I'm not going to add any garden there. So perhaps we'll add a bit of a vegetable patch behind this house. So now this is when I'm going in and looking at some of these. I'm going to steal some of these ideas now because they're great fillers. So this, I'm imagining, could be quite interesting for a hedge or a bit of farmland, a boundary. What could those represent? I don't know. Some little bushes.
Sweet peas.
Sweet peas?
Sweet peas.
Yeah, good idea. So we'll put some sweet peas in this garden. Some little crops there, some carrots. And some companion planting. Or I might just stick some little flowers on the top there. In this bed, I'm going to just do something that might represent something, some onions or some, you know, it's just giving a nice little abstract pattern. And then the viewer can look at this and wonder what it might be. So that's quite nice, isn't it? To not tell the whole story of this garden and to let someone ask some questions about it. What can I do in this garden? Well, there's a couple of big trees here. Oh, I know, we'll do a big tree. And there's always loads of birds in these trees. So I'm going to do a giant bird. Again, this is just proving my point that you don't need to have anything in proportion to
Lucia,
really
sorry,
enjoy.
Lucia, it's Julia again.
Julia?
Can I just ask you, could you do perhaps a garden workshop or garden studio, but from the front angle onwards?
Yeah.
See what I mean?
So on this little cheat sheet, I don't know if any of these might work out for a garden studio.
It's just that I'm drawing our bungalow from sort of front on, and then I realised I'm drawing this. I'm drawing a workshop from bird's eye view.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I suddenly stopped myself and thought, oh, how would I do that? Because they, if you think of the front of a building,
Yeah.
if you were looking sort of over the, if you were looking down, you would see the front of the door on each of them and not the width of them. So you would, do you see what I mean? Can you see my page? I've only just been doing, does that show?
Hang on a minute. Julia, let me just spotlight you.
Can you see what I started?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I can see what you're doing. Julia, do you know, I actually think that you should, because it's so beautifully drawn, I think you should carry on like that from a bird's eye view.
That's my little VW transporter in the middle. That's
Really
Henry.
lovely. I think you should, because you've done that roof so beautifully, what you could do is, I'll show you on my my bit of paper a minute. Hang on a minute, that one moves the spotlight. So, go on to the, so you had done your roof with a sort of a pitch like that, hadn't you?
Well, yes, I did sort of an oblong, and then I thought, oh, I'll put the roof on it, and then there's a little skylight in one of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've done.
So I think even though you've got one perspective on your the houses that were down there.
Yes.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with mixing up the perspective. So, so if you were keeping the same perspective, you might have drawn that little garden studio. I don't know what the doors are like, but you know, it might be like something like
it's
that.
like that's hubbies, and that's got like 2 doors. It's like French doors, but they both face away from the, they both face away from the the same angle to the house. Yeah.
So so one option is obviously to alter the position of the viewer, so you're changing it, or this would be absolutely fine to do a bird's eye view of your studio. So then you just don't need to have any windows in there. You could add texture to the roof.
Yeah, because it's tiled roof, and then there's a single door. It's the old garage, but we had it
yeah. So obviously from this point of view, unless you've got a door here.
Yeah, there is a door there.
So I just do it a bit like that, Julia.
Yeah.
So you've got roof like that, and then the door there.
Yeah, no, that works quite well actually.
That would work all right. Yeah, I mean, even if you could do a flattened, I like to do it with all the properties facing the viewer's direction, but if you had some, I mean, and a lot of you will have this, where you might have a couple of houses facing this way, and then you might have properties along here. Now, do you remember I did it so that the little sort of terraces were joined up, but on their roofs? If that's too painful for people to do, you could completely flatten them out so that they're facing the right direction, but that they are you know, just lining another part of the street, but in a different direction. But again, just flat, just a flat perspective.
Because that's the problem that I've got. Is well, it's not a problem. It's where I'm doing where we live, and it's like a U-shaped cul-de-sac. So that's what I was thinking. I might just turn the paper as I go.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And just draw. Otherwise, it might not. You know.
Yeah.
I could do it for our Christmas card for our neighbours.
Yeah. Well, if you think this one of the 70s cul-de-sac is kind of a T shape, you can see. Well, it kind of is and it should go round to there. And all of these houses a lot of them are semi-detached, but I've detached them, and they all face inwards. So I could have illustrated them like that, so that they were sort of flat and facing this way, you know, the correct way.
Yeah.
So I have used a lot of artistic license with it, but it depends, because it wouldn't look. I don't think it would look bad like that. I think it would look fantastic. It could be a really quirky little drawing, and then you could add in, you know, people's gardens again, really flat, or you know, all the little things, without having to worry again about any perspective.
I think because of what you've done and the way you've done it, is it, you know, like you say, it's okay to just do your own thing anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's no, it's really nice. I was thinking of because I started off, you know, like when a landscape designer or whatever draws a tree, and they draw it like
so they would draw it like this, wouldn't they, from above?
Yes. And I was thinking, I was starting to do that, and I thought, no, it's better to do a proper tree. So it's a whole different way of thinking, really.
It is, yeah. And it's kind of it does mess with your head a little bit, but it's really liberating.
Yeah.
And I sometimes mix and match them in my little maps. So I might have a few trees and bushes like this, and sometimes a bit of hedging like this, and I put on the
not poo.
Not poo. It's not a massive turd on your piece of paper. So hedging can be represented like this, but then you could have a proper little hedge like that. And again, you could add texture and pattern into your hedge by crossing over some lines. We've just had a hedge laid, at the end of the spring. And that's really, it's such a lovely pattern, the hedge laying with the little posts that go up, and then it's got bits of, hazel in different directions. So I was thinking that could be a really nice way to represent a laid hedge. Generally, this map making is a really great exercise in looking at shapes and patterns and making them work, simplifying it and making it work for you. So it can be incredibly liberating, because when you know that you're not creating a cartographically correct map, you're creating an illustrated map. You then get basically a certificate. It's a virtual certificate that exists in my head, but I'm posting it into your head now. You get a certificate which gives you permission slip to literally do whatever you want to represent the shape or feel of something. So you're capturing the feel. It's a bit like when a film producer interprets a famous book and it's never quite the same. So this illustration is your interpretation of that place or space or memory. It doesn't have to be the same. It's your individual interpretation of it. Sometimes that permission is incredibly liberating. I know for some of you, because it's so easy, isn't it, to put different blocks in your way of thinking, well, I can't draw a house like that, and it doesn't sit like that, and then it just stops you creating the whole map because you're completely stuck and you can't get the angle of something right.
Yeah. Hi, Lucia. I just wanted to say that, I really agree, because if you think that, in your imagination, you see all these different houses really differently, and you can just incorporate your own different types of style into it. So you can have one perspective and then a different perspective. And I really like that actually. Yeah.
Yes, it's useful, isn't it? If any of you do want to do a very quick perspective house, a really great way of doing it, so I'm talking about flats, but is to do a 3D box. Most of us can do a 3D box. And you draw a middle line along the top panel, which is parallel to these top ones. So already it's getting complicated, isn't it? And then another line in the middle of that that's parallel to those two, and another line in the, sort of in the middle of that face. So each face of that box is dissected. And then in this end face, you do your triangles. Then in this stage, you cut that across and you get sort of your house shape. So there's your roof. And there's your windows. But you start putting houses like that into a village with lots of different perspectives, and it starts to get incredibly complicated. But you can put a few in like that, and then it gives a bit of a raised effect. Yeah, there's all different sort of skewed perspectives on map making, and I just think this is the most liberating way. Right, before we run out of time, I just want to show you a couple of painting options that I like to use for these little houses. So actually, let me just, I'll just add a few more textures in to fill up some of this space. So just so that I know that I've got a few options to colour. I'll draw in, I'll just do a bit of writing in as well. So again, with your waterproof pen, you can add your text in before you paint. You can add it in after you paint. If you're going to use collage text, obviously that needs to be when everything's dry. I think I'll just add in a little bit of text now. I like to use my own handwriting, but on my lettering workshop, I've got lots of different ways of doing lettering. So I'll do a bit of fancy pants lettering. Kilcott Road. I do love an arrow.
Could you please draw a very basic dog?
Pardon?
Could you please draw a very basic dog, because we have
Basic
hundreds.
A basic dog. When we did the pop-up houses workshop, that did become a whole, it was like a collection of little drawn things. Does everybody remember that came along? Of like, can you draw a topiary chicken? A basic dog, so I'll do him big, is I would say a U shape for a head. And then some little ears. Little side. I'm not very good at drawing dogs. This is more my dog.
That's lovely, thank you.
Yeah, the basic shapes for a dog are a U with a little curved top, and then a kind of an upside down larger version of that shape. right there. And then you probably could add, that looks more like a cat. That cat could be the same if you're drawing cats, everybody. So it's the U-shaped body, curly tail, ears, whiskers. Okay, so I've got my buildings, and I like to keep the colour systems for the maps really simple. So I'm not going to talk massively about colour, because I've done loads of workshops where we're going over different sort of colour systems. I'm just going to show you an image of our village that I did as a commission and tell you about the colour choices that I used on it. Can you see that one? So this is our village from, I'm just checking, can everybody see that all right? Can you do a little thumbs up? Yep, thank you. This is our village from a different perspective, and it's just taken through a few more different stages. So I've done, instead of doing this with the pen stage, I just did it with a really heavy dark pencil that I drew the outlines with, and then I washed over the paint. The colour choice for this was because the person who commissioned me to do this wanted this sign put in that says Hillesley, Kingswood 2 miles, London 108.5 miles. And it was because the person who was being gifted to originated from London. And that sign is kind of very prominent in our village, and it is bright yellow. So because that was really important, I then sort of added that yellow in, you can see, into some of the grassy bits and lawns. There's just a sort of a hint of like yellowy. It looks like you've had a hot summer basically, and none of the grass is left, so it's a bit washed out. So that was the sort of thinking behind that. All of the maps I've done have been very washed out, wishy-washy looking, so that the colour isn't massively, you know, sort of not a big thing. I've just coloured in the roofs of the houses and made sure that this colour was prominent. Just looking to see if there's anything else. I know there's a red phone box. That's always quite good if you've got a red. Oh yeah, so there was the red phone box. There was a red post box underneath the Hillesley sign. And then there was a red cricket ball. So cricket was also really important to the recipient of this map. This map was also designed with all of the things that they really liked. So it had their house on, the church, the pub, the school where their children went to school, and one of the houses that they lived in first of all. So, and the walks, so they would like to go on the walk that went up through the path leads through the green shady meadows to the wild uplands. So again, there is, well, maybe there is a wild uplands up there. We walk there quite a lot. It's not too wild, but I just found those words in a book, and then I thought it was quite funny. And up to the region of High Land is Hawkesbury. Very dodgy place. So I'll just stop that a minute, and I'll show you first of all the super easy option when it comes to colour. So super easy is whatever colour you have done your map. So if it's brown, we'll use brown. If it's black, sort of use a grey. You can get coloured fine liners. So a map done with a blue fine liner or a green fine liner. You could even draw one of your little houses. That's with, if you've got these nice oily pencils that I've got, you could do your whole map in pencil if you wanted to. That would look really quite nice, wouldn't it? So whatever colour it is, you're going to mix up a tint. So I'm going to go with a brown for these brown houses. And this is the really easy colour option because it means you don't have to think about colour at all, other than where you're going to just add your little tint. So I've got my watercolours, and I've got some water, and I've got quite a big brush. So again, I'm quite messy, so I don't do any very neat painting. If you are a very neat person, then I would go for a much smaller brush. This is about a size 8. If you were being neater, maybe you'd go for a size 4. So, like I said, I would just create a little brown tint. So you've probably all got brown in your watercolour palette. You've probably got something like this burnt sienna. Most watercolour palettes have them. It's like a reddy brown. You could go in straight away with that. Or you could neutralise it a little bit if it's a bit too bright and a bit orangey with a little bit of blue. So just a tiny touch. It's going to take the orange out of that and make it more of a, well, a kind of colder brown. This isn't a really strong mix. It's really quite watery. And I'm just going to pick up that colour and just add areas of it to my map where I think are darker, so roofs. You might add some to your trees. There might be little panels and patches of land that you want to add it to. If you've got some areas that you haven't added pattern to, you could use your brush to add that texture. I've gone in very light with the colour because you can always go back over it. So we're just doing a little wash of not everywhere, and it doesn't really matter. So just areas that are darker, which is usually roofs, grass, trees, pathways. And that's just a one tint colour option. I'm going to let that dry, and then I quite often go over with exactly the same colour tint, but just a little bit darker. But you can see that's got a really quite nice vintage look to it. And it keeps it really simple. I've not worried if the paint has gone over the lines or the edges, because the structure that I've drawn with the waterproof pen acts like a skeleton. So I've say this quite a lot, that will hold it still. You know, that you could go all over the place and flick paint on it, and it's absolutely fine because you've got this really strong rigid structure, so the rest can be really loose now. I love the idea of adding texture with a brush and little borders that perhaps you hadn't thought about. Not worrying if it's going over the edges or a bit messy. If you wanted to, so you could do, if I was going really simple, I would again take that colour, that same colour, and just tint the road and the pathways with it. But just to add a bit of another option if you want to. Going back to that colour, pick up a little bit more blue and just add a bit more blue to it, will make it more grey. If it's not, you just keep adding more or less of the brown or the blue to kind of get the colour you want. So more of the brown will make it a warmer grey, and more of the blue will make it sort of a colder grey, blue grey. I'm going to add a bit more of the warmth because I want it to sort of still be a version of this that we've already used, but just slightly different. And then just paint your road. Don't know if you caught that. Quick as lightning I was, because I don't ever take very long to do any painting. I just sort of swish my brush on like that. I've already got the structure. I might bring in some little pathways. So again, it's difficult on the camera because you've got a reflection of the water. So again, you could go right up to the edge and really enjoy painting it, or just be very loose. I'm hoping that these are going to be dry soon and I can just show you going over them again. But this to me means that if you've spent a really enjoyable long time drawing little plants in and doodling little hedges and textures and patterns in, by adding a tone to it rather than painting it, you're not going to mess anything up. You're only going to make it look better, because you're not making any colour decisions. So the pain is taken out of that last stage. You know what you're going to do. You just add some tint to a few different places. If you're worried about going straight into your own painting, your own drawing and your lovely map that you've spent a couple of hours drawing it all out, then draw a couple of loose little houses on another piece of paper and test your tint. Just draw a little row and see which amounts of tints and colours look nice. But I would say, try and go for a tint that's similar to the pen colour you've used. It does look, brown and the black pen look really nice together. But you could also add a bit more blue and get more of a grey on that black if you wanted to. So just any colour. So say you had gone colourful and done all of your map in a different colour. It's just mixing that colour. So we know to make green, we use yellow and blue. Most palettes already have a pre-mixed green, so feel free to use that if you want to. So mine's quite bright look, alarming. So if you've got a pre-mixed green, if you want to knock it back, add a little bit of red to it and it'll make it go a bit brown, slightly brown, take the edge off of it, neutralize it. I'm thinking that green is quite dark, this is quite bright, so perhaps if I added a bit of blue to that, I might darken it a bit. That works quite well, doesn't it? Blue, if you add blue to green, it's always going to work because it's one of the colours that makes green. So I've made a nice sort of darker green there. So that might be my tint for that little house. Could do its path, 2 little veg beds. This is another thing I do, very simple shapes. Try drawing them with a brush. So a tree is very simple, circle, and then pull the trunk down. It adds quite nice contrast to the structure of the house. A little bush in as well. We've spoken about glazing before in previous classes, where you add more than one layer of watercolour. So we could leave it like this as a little 1-layer glaze or tint. But if you've got areas that you want to strengthen and add a bit more colour, you could just add another layer of tint to them, and it acts like acetate, like layers of see-through acetate. So when one layer is completely dry, then adding another layer of colour on top will intensify the impact. And I like to do that in not all the places that I've added the tint to. So you could look at that as layer 1 where you've got lots of coverage. And then the layer 2, you add just a little bit less, so it brings in a bit more detail. I'm going to mix up that same colour again. So that was the brown, I use this a lot in my classes, as most of you know. It makes a really good, you can even use it to make sky, this kind of grey brown. So I've got I've got a bit less water in there, a bit more intense colour brown. And then, oh dear, I didn't mean to do that. I haven't got any kitchen roll. Add to the texture. Then just add a little bit more brown to some of the areas that you want to add emphasis to. So I think usually roofs are quite dark. Perhaps you add a bit more in between those hedge beds. Maybe that hedge needs a bit. Side of that tree. So then you can see that you've got complexity starting to emerge in all these different layers of contrast that we've not really been thinking about. We've not been intending to create layers of contrast, but you've got contrast in the lovely line work. It might be that you've changed the nib width of your pen. You know, some of these fine liners, you've got a thick pen and a thin pen, so you can add little details in with the thin one and bigger details in with the thicker one. That's a contrast. Even if you've just used one type of pen, that's one layer very structured. Then you've loosened it up by adding another layer of light tone. And then you've brought in another layer of slightly darker tone. And you've not really been trying. You're just thinking, well, where do I want my eye to go? Wherever the darker areas are, that's where people's eyes will be directed. So if you were doing this over a whole map, it's really important to keep in mind that if you've got a dark area here with dark roofs, then that needs to be repeated in other areas of your map. Otherwise, your eyes are just going to be drawn to this area, the darkest area. So that darkness needs to run through, very much like the letterbox and the telephone box and the cricket ball were positioned almost like a triangle. So if they were all in one clump, then our eyes would be drawn to the red. So whatever you bring through your map, make sure it's repeated, even if there isn't, you know, so say for instance, there wasn't a telephone box, I probably would have added a fake apple tree with some red apples on, or, you know, little red flowers in a border or something like that. So you can really, again, apply your artistic license to manipulate the viewer to take them on a journey through your map. I just need to get these little trees done. Add a little shadow under your trees as well. That can be really effective. And sort of shadowing pathways and grass. Are there any questions on that little part of colour? Because we're nearly at the end of the session. I'm just going to talk you through.
Lucia, it's Meg.
Hi, Meg.
Hiya. I've got in my map, it's of the square where I lived, and it always used to have cobbled stones on the pavements, which are lovely, but it's also got a really stony wall that's part of it as well. And with the flatness of it, it's quite hard to make the difference. Shall I just do it with the shapes that I've drawn in, so have more angular shapes with the wall and more rounded shapes? I'm not going to put every single cobble, obviously.
No, I definitely think you could definitely do that. It's just because it doesn't have to be bang on, but you could have, you know, one of your cobbles could perhaps be maybe a rounder shape.
Yeah.
Perhaps the other one could be interlocking square
yeah,
shape.
yeah. It's more just. I mean, it's not quite as square as that, but yes, I can make it more angular.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
what you could do is, with one of them, using this sort of tinting watercolor system, is that one of them could be tinted and maybe the other is not, or you use a different, add a bit of emphasis onto one with adding another sort of layer of paint and maybe not the other.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
The other, I wonder whether you could have sort of curves that you add cobbles to.
Or I could make the wall, because I'm going to have all the buildings facing into the square. So like that other lady said, just move it round so that they all face in, which is you. I could do the same with the wall, couldn't I? And make that more 3D.
Yeah. Or my very complex technique for doing things that look exactly the same as something else is then putting a big label by them. So you can write cobbled path.
Yeah, actually I like that better.
Yeah, do that. Instead of doing the cobbles, you could just write cobbled path here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so like I said to you, I'll just go over. So I'm not going to get time to show you the little map fold, but what I will do is send you a YouTube video of it, and I might even sort of film myself and send that to you, because it's really useful for other stuff and it's useful for the next project we're doing as well. But I'll just talk you through loads of different options for lettering. One of them is obviously to hand letter and use your own handwriting. You could cut individual letters out, like kind of a hostage style kidnap letter. You could cut whole words out. You could use an old typewriter, like I've done here, to type what you need. You could use little stamps to create your lettering. You could combine loads of them. So you could stamp numbers, you could cut words out, you could add hand lettering. I'll give you some top tips as well of where to find lettering. So if you're doing a garden map, then getting gardening magazines and the sort of gardening section out of a newspaper can be brilliant for text on gardening. Picking up books like this from the charity shop or from car boot sales. So this one I don't really want to cut up because it's quite useful, and I kind of like it because it's got these funny sort of like typed instructions. But this type of guidebook to your area, or any area in general, you can apply it to a lot of areas, has lots of interesting text in it, like about 1.75 miles on fields and lanes, an A-level route, which may be the main feature, blah, blah, blah. So you can cut out sections of words like south of the village or walk B, these things, words like stile, cross, junction, 2 interesting villages. They've got descriptions as well in guidebooks. Medieval cream and buff encaustic floor tiles. And what about adding a mighty little organ if you've got a church? So, I said about words popping out to you, it is usually those kind of words that pop out to me, especially because I use Mills and Boon a lot for stuff like this, and 50 Shades of Grey. They're always good for descriptions. Walking on the water. Several long distance footpaths, things like that. Directional books. I've got an old AA manual that I got from a car boot sale, which is fantastic. You might not want to cut up books. I don't have a problem with cutting up old books and maps, but things like a used National Trust membership handbook or leaflets from your area that you can pick up from your sort of local information and tourist information and the library and stuff. They don't have to apply just to your area. So they've got great descriptions, like words like dramatic, highbrow high brown fritillary butterflies can be seen in June and July. You know, that can be sat into in a garden map beautifully. So that's, you know, that kind of thing is really brilliant. Yeah, so these are my book pages. I've got masses of broken books, and I always look through the page to see if any words might pop out for me. I can almost guarantee that if I picked up an old book or magazine, that something would come and find me word-wise. And those of you that have done this form of found poetry on Art Before with me know that the words do come and find you. So I can only you have to spend time doing it, and then you can snip them out and stick them on. Old maps are great for adding little edges. So you can see I've added bits of map section onto the top here. And they don't have, and it's added quite a nice little sort of edge and angle to it. And they do have quite good words on that you can cut out for your own map. So that could be 1 inch ordnance survey map of my garden. I like little things like that. These maps are obtainable from Ordnance Survey agents and most good booksellers. So you can just add those things on. And then, yeah, so snipping off these little top parts of the maps can be good. If you don't want to snip them up, then, oh look, this has already been snipped. Then photocopying them, or just cutting maps out of, like I said, guidebooks and leaflets that you can find. But I particularly like looking for words that pertain to travel, and like this one I really like, key to the map sections. The geography, that was a bit of a find, the word geography. But they will come and find you. And then they're added on right at the end, so allowing all your paint to dry. You might have already added some text, and then those additional found words are the thing that will take you hours and hours and hours of joyful exploration. And it's why I don't think I can ever make these to commission, because I'd have to charge people such a lot of money for the hours and hours that I spend looking for all the tiny words. And I've got boxes in my studio of snipped up words that I don't know where I'm going to use them yet, but they're there because they're good ones. So, but that's the bit that takes ages, I think, is finding the words, but it's so nice, so much fun. So is there any other little bits that I've missed off that you think you would just like me to mention before we sign off? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. So I'm going to put my camera up, if that was all. And I'm back again, everybody. I didn't go anywhere. I was just sat here. But now we've gone over a little bit. And for those of you that need to go and have a lie down and a gin, you're very welcome to leave the session now. It's officially, we are done. But lots of you like to stay on and show work and share any little bits that you've done. But it might be that, like some of the sketchbook sessions we've done, you haven't actually got lots of stuff to show. So it might be quite a short little show and tell. But if anybody would like to stay on and talk about a little idea that they've had or show a little thing that they've discovered, then you're very welcome to. But if you do need to go, you'll get a video of this tomorrow. And it was lovely to see you. Thank you for joining. So if you do want to show anything, just hold your paper up like this, and then I'll know that you are happy for me to share you on the screen. Hello. Now, is it Lies or Lise? Yeah, you have to pop your microphone on.
Yeah. Well, it's Annelies from the Netherlands, but we say Lies for short, but you read it like Lies, so I'm telling not the truth. So
Lise.
okay, appreciated.
Hi,
And-
Lise. And how did you get on today?
Sorry?
How did you get on today?
Well, I had my second shot of the vaccine today, so
Oh.
I'm a bit not completely fine, but I
Aw.
really enjoyed this.
Good.
And I made a lot of notes.
Oh, lots of notes.
Yeah.
Your screen isn't very clear, Lise. We can't see it that well, but I bet that is a beautiful sketchbook page full of, oh yes, loads of diagrams and bits and pieces.
Yes.
Gorgeous.
Well, my sister turns 50 real soon.
Yep.
And I was thinking about making a map with places and memories and milestones of her life to give to her on her birthday.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great way to do that. So
it's such a nice gift, isn't it?
yes, and it's personal, and yeah, I think she will like it.
Yeah.
And further, I want to thank you for giving me a little very polite British kick in the butt this week. I did some automatic drawing every day this week. I even made a habit tracker.
Oh.
And well, it felt very good to do everything a little bit every day. I also did a little bit of watercoloring, sketching every day.
That's great.
So you got me back on the flow.
Back on track. So for those of you, most of you won't know, so Lise had got really overwhelmed by all of the videos that you'd been watching by lots of different artists, hadn't you, who had given you so many great ideas, but you were just sort of swamped and you didn't know, you just almost like blocked by it all, weren't you?
Yes.
And so you did free automatic drawing, just getting your pen on the paper and seeing what came out of your arm, basically, weren't you?
Yeah.
And I bet all sorts of crazy stuff, because it's kind of like a channel from your head. Yeah.
Very ugly things.
Yeah, but that's okay, isn't it? Yeah.
But also some things I liked, and I like to go further on.
Amazing. And it is about the process rather than the end result when you do automatic drawing as well. So the process being that whilst you're doing it, your head just kind of unravels itself, and it's giving you permission to make a mark on the page. Yes. And it kind of then allows all the good stuff to come through. So it's the process rather than the end result, which is, and it's so important. So
and also I found it really helpful to also do a little bit of drawing every day. So it's getting a habit, even if you don't have an idea or something, but you did draw something or paint a little bit. You keep the motor rolling, I guess.
Yeah, and you stop the fear from creeping back in as well, I think. You know, you just keep.
Yes, because every time I stop, it takes me weeks to start again. So it's very good for me to do a little bit every day.
Definitely, yeah, and knowing that whatever you do doesn't have to be good, you know, it's just something, which is a great liberating thing, you know, isn't it? It's just making a mark.
Yes. So fantastic. Thank you very much for that.
That's a pleasure. Well done. Nice to see you. Okay. Anyone that wanted to show anything, just sort of wave a bit of paper around. But like I said, I don't know if. Oh, Ursula.
I've got quite a. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Ursula. How did you get on?
Hello.
Hello.
I am 14. I don't know if anyone. Oh, hello.
So she's going to show us all up now, basically, everybody.
And I did like a little bit of mix from my imagination. So I've got like a Ferris wheel here, and this is like a Minnie Mouse. I kind of thought a bit like Disneyland, something like that. But then I a bit of villages here, little tree. So kind of
there's a little bit of our village, Ursula, with like a brilliant with a merry-go-round. Amazing. I definitely am glad that I live in this village.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? And I really
come down your end because it looks much more fun.
I might get a drawing too, but it's really good.
Oh no.
It's much more like an engineer's drawing, so there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That's lovely.
So that's actually, that is what our village looks like, everybody.
No, this is somewhere completely different. This is my.
That's not what our village looks like.
No, this is the first place I lived. So it was a bit, when I saw your picture on Insta,
yeah,
I was very inspired. I thought that was really nice. It was very touching, and I thought, oh yeah, I could do one of those of the first place I remember as a child. So yeah, and I can, but in that way I can put little notes on it, like so I have here where. Oh wow! You just done that.
What? I'm just trying to.
Where Richard threw 50p to the ducks.
Oh.
Yeah. And the bee, watch out for the bee.
Oh, what happened? So it's P, did you say?
No, the bee. The bee.
bee.
It's only you. It's only you who likes to put P on the drawings. No, I was cycling my first bike and I got stung by a bee.
Fantastic. And those kind of memories are the ones that are really they're really special to put on there, aren't they? Fantastic.
They are. And thank you. This is such a great workshop.
Pleasure. Thank you for sharing.
I've got just a scribble. Oh, sorry. I've got a scribble.
Is that Meg?
Yes, I've got a scribbly one, but I wanted to do, I can't see where it is. Oh yeah. But I've made all sorts of notes all the way around it.
Brilliant.
And that this is probably the most important thing because my granddad designed the sign for the village.
Oh wow.
So that's on the main road. So that's going to be it. But I've got huge space in the middle, which I'm now going to close in, and more space around the outside, which I don't want. So I've got so many notes, I'm going to take a week to get through it.
Yeah. But it might be, Meg, that becomes like a planning version.
Yes.
You can then kind of keep figuring those notes out and then move on to another one that you can collate all of that. So
yeah, at least I know I can get it on this size.
Yeah.
Whereas initially it was about 4 foot square and I thought, no, I can't quite manage that.
Yeah. Yeah, the rough kind of working your way to best versions is really great, getting neater and neater and neater in your rough ones. Yeah, it's fantastic. Thanks,
yeah.
Meg.
Thank you.
So anyone else like to, oh, Alison, do you prefer being called Ali? Alison, you're on Spotlight, you just need to unmute yourself so you can press your space bar.
Done that, I think.
Oh wow, Ali, that's beautiful.
I went a bit green with it because we live right out in the country, so
yeah, I like the green.
I felt it needed to be that rather than a colour of any other thing, really.
Yes.
So this is a lane where I lived for about 18 years. There's only a few houses, but yeah.
Lovely. I love the little sort of patches and gardens that you've got there. Yeah. And it's a really subtle, I mean, it might be different because it's on Zoom, but it's a really subtle tint of green with the other grey, and it works really well.
Yeah, I didn't want to be too bright. I kept blotting it in the end to get rid of it. But no, it's great. It went better than I thought. I was a bit nervous at first, but it was almost like a patchwork putting this one together because it was quite regular in its shade.
That's a good way to put it, Ali. It's like a patchwork blanket, isn't it? Of areas that you need to fill in with colour and pattern and houses.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
So, lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing. Right. Who else have we got then? Anyone else like to share? Vicky. Hi, Vicky. Oh, we've got you on mute.
There we are.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So I decided to do my walk. So this is my house here.
Yeah.
And this is my friend Mary's house here.
Oh.
And so
is that you walking?
That's me walking with my 3 dogs.
Oh.
And I go past, that's where the wild strawberries grow.
Yeah.
And there's cattle. We're living in I live in Ireland.
Yeah.
So there's cattle here and there's a lot of sheep and that, but this is the bridge where the dogs go swimming on the way to Mary's. And
Oh,
that's the old schoolhouse. I loved doing this. I really enjoyed it.
it's
Oh,
so
this-
lovely because what you've done as well, and I think that it's the nice thing to think about is you're thinking about all those key elements that you spot on your walk.
Yeah, there's
help
loads
tell the
more.
story.
Yeah,
lovely.
I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Oh, well, I look forward to seeing the finished article. It's absolutely beautiful, lovely, lovely work.
Thank you.
Victoria. Hi, Victoria.
Hi. So I asked you about the hills, and although
hill solution.
Yeah, so I just wanted to show you what I did, because the hills are actually massive hills. Like, I live in Scotland, so that, it's not like a bump. But I've done my map upside down, so I've actually put north in the other direction.
Yeah.
And so the hills are behind my house and huge, but I've decided to just represent them as a tiny little.
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
If I was coming to visit you where you live, that gives me enough information to know that that's going to the hills. And you can always write these hills are huge.
Yeah.
But it gives me that tells me the story, and that's the thing, I think, is just imagining if you were reading it as a story, would that give you the information you need? And I think it absolutely would.
Yeah.
The hills, they're fantastic. You could always
I wish I was in the back of the house so I could show you out the window and you'd be like, oh, okay, yes, they're huge.
It's a very big hill.
Yeah.
Well,
but I decided when you put about, just putting a bump, I thought, well, actually, because then I was like, should I have done it the other way around? Should I have done north at the top? And then I was like, well, that's too late. Well, they'll just have to be little bumps. But that was perfect. Thank you so much.
But they also, you can, by adding in tiny little trees at their base, or tiny little figures, or tiny sheep or something, that can make what seems, might just be a little bump that you've drawn, suddenly it puts it into perspective with other things in the area.
Right,
even if it's out of perspective to the houses, but you'll then, by adding tiny trees, suggesting these hills are massive.
Yeah, so if I put them just at the bottom, because the trees, there aren't trees at the top.
I can imagine, or little bushes, or I don't know, but it's that idea that you can manipulate things to, it's thinking, what could I do to make those things smaller? You could even add tiny little huts or houses at the very base of the hill, or if there's any little sort of croft cottages or something like that, just again to give that idea of their volume, or like I said, create a little signage. You could have a little sign to the hills, brackets very big.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect. Thank you.
Well, yeah, you've said it on Zoom now. We believe you, they are officially massive hills. Okay, just checking out, see if anyone else would like to share anything that I've not left you out. Jude. Oh, that's lovely, Jude. So have you done, now is this a map of the area, or is this like a little note sketch?
This is where I lived for my first 20 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was born here.
Yeah.
My nan lived here. We sold these two houses and bought this big one here.
Wow.
And they built a primary school next door to the house, which was convenient.
Was that your own personal primary school?
Yeah, we were the first people who went there. It was an open school in the 60s, and they decided that children would learn if they just let them roam free through the classrooms.
Fantastic.
It was like a 1960s idea. I just used to spend all my time in the art room.
That's exactly where I would be. I think they should teach like that now.
We used to make up plays, and it was just let the children just get on with it. We had maths cards occasionally, which we sort of picked up the same card every so often and did. But anyway, so that was a great school to build. They built it in my garden pretty much. This was a field before.
Fantastic.
Anyway, and then this was middle school, and the Sunday school and the library. So there's lots of things that I need to add into it.
Yes, but it's fantastic,
you can
and
kind of get
it's lovely that as well you've been picking those key things. Like we've seen everybody, those memories just pop out, don't they? Of what you know to be the most important things. They kind of come really quickly.
Yeah, and it's funny how you remember the telephone number and I haven't lived there for 40 years or something, but I can remember the telephone number.
And your postcode.
I didn't have a telephone till I was about 15, but anyway, once we got a telephone, and the postcode you can remember from the house, which is
your
quite.
first house, you do, don't you? Isn't that funny? But I'm so glad you've put those details down because they're really important, aren't they?
It needs a lot more. There's lots more to add, obviously.
But hopefully you'll have fun. You'll have fun sort of walking through the memories.
Yeah, it's been a really nice evening.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jude. Right. Any other offers on just showing your work? I know. Oh, Wendy. Hi, Wendy.
Hiya.
Oh, that's so cute.
So I've just basically drawn my route to work because I'm lucky that I can walk to school where I work each day. So I was trying to capture that. But I live in suburbia, so it's full of houses. So I've tried to kind of find some green bits and the interesting bits.
Cut them out, yeah. Oh, it's so nice. It's so cute, and you've made it fit really well on your page as well.
Yeah, well, I kind of cheated that I already printed out of Google Maps so I could see the shape of the bit
see the shape.
I wanted.
Yeah, it's another top tip.
Because I couldn't really imagine in my head how it would all fit together. So before the evening, I just found it on Google Maps and printed it so that I could sort of pick the piece.
Well done. It's really nice, and you've had a bit of colour. I can't see it really clearly.
Oh, sorry.
I can see. Oh, I can see. Yeah, you've got lots of little kind of touches of colour. Really lovely, and loads of. I can see all the dark windows as well, which is great. They work so well as like a little, eye magnet. Fantastic. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Anyone else, just in case? Oh, there we go. Julia. Oh, gorgeous. Quantock Road.
Yeah, we're just down in Portishead. So,
so you're not too far.
No.
And actually, it's come out looking really good, your resolution, because you've then got the other little. Is that your husband's shed or summer house or the one next door?
That's his, yeah. And then the neighbours. But it's where we live now, and it's just the best place we've ever lived.
Oh.
The neighbours were just all a big gang.
That's so nice. And that it looks so nice that you've got those lovely little studios and sheds in your garden as well. I'd like to live there.
It's, do you know, it's my friend of 40 years likes it so much. She moved in 3 doors away. So I'm like I did warn her. I said, you've got to be sure. It's a lot of money to spend. Get it wrong. But no, so I've only done a bit because my grandson rang halfway through. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Fantastic.
And I use my magnifying lens because I find it a lot easier to draw than you can work really tiny because that's an 00.
Strain your eyes.
Yeah, it's an 003. So it's just really nice to be able to work so small. And I've just come back from Exmoor and we've just been looking at all the cottages down there. And everyone I looked at, I was going, oh, Lucia would like this one. or Lucia. I never know how to say your name.
I'm Lucia like a fuchsia.
Oh, Lucia like a fuchsia. Brilliant. I know. But yeah, so thank you very much. Really good.
Pleasure. Thanks for sharing your work. It's absolutely lovely.
Good, thank you.
Now, just checking through, I can't see anyone else that's got their work hanging around, but sometime. Oh, there we go, Morag. I don't ever want to leave anyone out because
that's all right.
Oh, sorry, hang on, I've got to get rid of Julia's spotlight.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Morag.
Hiya.
Oh, that's so cute.
I have never drawn before in my life, so
I'm just really impressed. My goodness, it's been amazing.
But I live in Solihull, so it's just all town and houses. So this is kind of my road here, completely out of scale. And yes, there's a big park, and then I've kind of picked out the parky bits that kind of look a bit nicer, I think. But I've really enjoyed the class. It's been really good fun.
Oh, good. And tell me, having never drawn before, you didn't find it too overwhelming? Was it you found it all kind of like straightforward?
Yeah, you've explained it really well, and I think, broke everything down really easily. And I did your tiny typewriter class last week.
Great.
Because I saw you on Instagram, and I just really enjoyed that so much, because I love typewriters anyway, but and I love little houses, so it's all been fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, I think your map is incredible, so well done.
Good start.
Drawing it is amazing. Well done, you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
And you.
Okay, anyone else? Any more? Just in case you've plucked up the courage, I don't want to leave you out. Nicola, oh, there's a little cheeky one from Nicola there. Oh, this is brilliant. I'm so glad you shared this, Nicola. It's beautiful. I can't believe all the work everyone's done.
This is my house here, number 29. It is actually built by my granddad. And so the third generation now lives in it. So
you're living in that house now?
Yeah, and it actually differs from all the neighbours that he helped build as well, because he could only afford in the 50s a certain amount of bricks. So, and that's why he built it.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
so it's built out of the bricks he could afford.
Yeah, so it was literally designed and built by the bricks that he could buy.
Oh,
So,
that's incredible. What an amazing story.
Love it.
How nice that you can tell that story through map form,
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes you can have a complicated story, and thinking about how to illustrate that would be overwhelming, but to know that you could put it in a little map like this, it sort of says a lot of the words, doesn't it? And you can add all the rest of it in text.
Yeah, love it. Thanks so much.
Brilliant. Well done for such a gorgeous map. Amazing story, Morag. That's incredible. Any more before I let you go and have a lie down? What's on telly tonight? I don't know. Thursday's not very good. No football, thank goodness. Just checking. Right, I'm going to leave you all, let you get to your beds, and wish you well. Video tomorrow. See you soon. Lots of love. Happy drawing. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.